Hello everyone, Chaos here, and welcome to another old school RuneScape video. In the previous one, we went over my top 10 tips on how to improve mechanically and increase your game knowledge, and as we continue with the PVM month, today we will look at 15 bosses you can do in order to take things from theory to practice, for you to build the skills needed for content like raids and the Inferno. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe with notifications on, drop a like, and join our Discord server with a link in the description below. If you want to test your skills, you can find a team to raid with and actually start learning those pieces of content you've been putting off. Now, another quick disclaimer for this video is that this is my personal list of bosses you can do to develop some crucial mechanics and knowledge, and of course they may not be the definitive tier list of difficulty. For that, you can check my bossing ladder video I made a few months ago, but this video will go over some bosses and what you can learn from them. So that being said, let's begin. Before we start with the actual list of bosses though, I have to give an honorable mention to Vedion, Venenatis, and Callisto. The reason for this is because at the moment of making this video, all three of them can be safe spotted by doing very specific movement, and you will only lose just a bit of health when setting them up. After that though, all you need to do is attack and wait. This will teach you not only movement and tick-perfect attacking, but it will help you build the courage needed for tougher foes, since you are in the wilderness and PKers can come and shaft you at any given second. So in short, these three are here in the lowest difficulty, because once you know how to set them up, you can almost AFK them until they die. The actual list will start with the Chaos Fanatic, the Crazy Archaeologist, and the Deranged Archaeologist. While the Chaos Fanatic may be a bit more dangerous because it's also in the wilderness, all you need to do against these bosses is pray accordingly and move around to avoid their powerful attacks. The text above their head will let you know when this attack is coming, and even simple movement to avoid tons of damage will be helpful later on. Up next, we have another wilderness boss, being the Chaos Elemental. I was killing this boss on stream, and I was surprised at how, even with a pretty decent setup, you really can't get that many kills because of how often it attacks. If you take a different approach though, this boss will teach you how to flinch monsters in order to attack while not being damaged whatsoever. What flinching means is basically hitting a boss once and then running back to a safe spot until their health disappears for you to attack them again and again. If you've done the King's Ransom quest and the Knight's Wave training grounds, I'm pretty sure you have also applied this one here as you attack the Knights while not being damaged yourself. Finally on this tier, we have the Barrows Brothers. I always reference this boss when people ask me how to start bossing because it's just so easy, gives decent loot, and the mechanics are nothing out of this world. In order for you to take them out, these bosses will teach you things like gear switching and properly setting up your inventory for success. You can take this a step further by freezing the melee brothers and attacking them from afar, for you not to waste too much prayer and save on a little bit of supplies. We start with the next tier with a boss I am personally not a fan of, being Sarachnis. Although this is not my favorite way to get elite clue scrolls, which by the way are 1 in 60, Sarachnis is a great boss to practice movement and prayer switching, as well as killing it quickly in order to avoid excessive damage from its minions. When it traps you and runs away, you will have to pray ranged, quickly switching back to praying from melee whenever standing near her, and repeating the cycle this relatively easy boss. Next we have Commander Ziliana, and in my opinion this is the easiest boss at the God Wars dungeon. It doesn't matter if you have a rune crossbow with diamond bolts going all the way up to a cheeky twisted bow, as long as you attack her from a distance, all you will have to do is kite and run away. Honestly, dealing with the minions is more difficult than Ziliana herself, and if you want to take as little damage as possible, dealing with them will also be a good practice for those prayer flicks. We continue with one of my favorite tasks, the Dagannoth Kings. Now, some people will say that this is not as difficult once you are fighting them individually, which is actually the case, but that first entrance can be a bit brutal if you're not prepared. When setting up the rotation, you can apply skills such as prayer flicking to avoid attacks from the Prime and the Supreme, and once you are left alone with one of them at a time, this is a great place to practice gear switches as well, along with doing as much damage as possible before another king respawns. If you don't kill them in time though, it is time to go back to prayer flicking in order to avoid damage on your way to those nice rings or even the pets. For the next made up tier by your fellow Mexican, we have the Grotesque Guardians. With decent gear, this isn't so bad, so I just put it right here. This boss is excellent at teaching you things such as safe spotting, positioning, prayer changes, gear switches, being careful where to stand, and it's also a good DPS check, which means that you will need to deal enough damage before something happens. In this case, by killing Dawn before the purple orbs heal her. I can't say enough good about this boss, as once you are comfortable with them, all these skills will be second nature in your RuneScape journey. I'll put the Abyssal Sire next because kills may take slightly longer due to the mechanics, but it's really nothing too bad. This boss is great at developing skills such as gear switches, spell casting, movement, and positioning as you attack. Especially on the second phase, the acid pool on the ground will keep you on your toes, and time your attacks properly. On the topic of casting, you can also cast a Blood Barrage on the minions in case you get too low on HP, and on a more personal note, this boss heavily deserves a rework. Do we agree, or am I just coping? I will then jump to Cerberus. In my very personal opinion, this is slightly harder than the aforementioned bosses, because things can go wrong very, very quickly. Cerberus doesn't teach a lot, but it does teach one very crucial mechanic, being tick-perfect prayer switches. You also need to move away from the lava pools very quickly, which also teaches movement and positioning, and when the souls come out, you will need to pray against them accordingly, and these attacks come out very rapidly as well. If you want to take less damage though, you can also apply those prayer switches at the beginning of the kill, which are also relatively quick. All the bosses in this tier are not here because of their difficulty, but we are going to start with Zulrah. By battling the Muddy Snake, you will develop abilities such as prayer and gear switches, and the two extremely important mechanics we haven't seen until now. The very first one being rotations. If you didn't know, Zulrah has 3 possible rotations, meaning that she will appear at specific places of the arena and attack with different styles, helping you memorizing where to go for the next phase. The second one teaches you positioning, but instead of just moving around, you will learn where to stand in certain parts of the rotation in order to avoid damage. If you have a twisted bow though, you can just camp and avoid the need to bring your mage switches as well. Up next we have one of my favorite bosses in the game, being Vorkath. The Money Dragon also has a specific mechanic where every 7th attack he will do will have a special mechanic in the form of his freeze attack or the acid floor. The latter is especially important because it will teach you something called the Wook's Walking. This is basically you walking back and forth either with ranged or melee and attacking Vorkath as he is throwing fireballs at you. Other than learning, you will be making a ton of money on the way to mastering the Undead Dragon. Finally, for this tier, we have another one of my favorite bosses, being the Alchemical Hydra. Here, you will learn to lure the boss in specific areas in order to weaken it, switch your prayer every 3 attacks during the first 3 phases, and then every attack during the final phase. But most importantly, it will teach you to do the fire and the lightning skip by moving very specifically, which will speed up the kills and avoid more damage. At 95 Slayer, this is a fairly significant increase in requirements, but you're gonna learn a lot from it, and you're also gonna make a ton of GP. We begin the final tier with Nex. Now, if you do it in mass worlds, literally all you need to do is hit Nex once or twice between phases, and then hit the minions once before she falls in around a minute. If you're doing it on small teams, however, you will also need to understand mechanics such as the different phases, positioning, prayer switches, and of course her special attacks. With it, you will also learn something known as follow stalling, which makes it so Nex can barely attack, so doing this boss on small teams will not only yield a great profit eventually, but you will get used to mechanics you normally don't see anywhere else. For the runner-up spot, we have Phosani's Nightmare, or even just the Nightmare in general. Whether you do it on a team or even solo, this boss has so many mechanics that once you master it, you will do pretty okay in all other PVMing situations. The Nightmare will teach you mechanics such as prayer switches according to her animations, gear switches between phases, drinking Samfuse when needed, dealing with minions once they spawn, and the last phase will be a pretty harsh damage check for you to finish the kill off relatively quickly. Finally, we come to the Corrupted Gauntlet. From the moment you step foot in this crystal hell, you will have to start micromanaging pretty much everything in order to make kills efficient. This will teach you resource management, map navigation, prayer flicking to save on prayer points, and once you make it to the Hunlif itself, you have to keep track of so many things that once you can do the gauntlet without any issue, you can call yourself a true scaper. The Hunlif will teach you things such as prayer and weapon switches, positioning, avoiding additional threats in the form of the tornadoes, and keeping track of how many times you have hit in order to switch your weapons accordingly. Now, before I end the video, you might be wondering, what happened to some bosses we didn't talk about? I'll quickly mention all of them and what you can learn by battling them, but I wanted to keep all 5 categories with 3 bosses each just to not get really clogged. I guess you can see this as an added category of bosses, and whatever you learn from them can mostly be applied by battling said boss. I'll start with the Kraken because, well, it's the Kraken, and if you're using fishing explosives, you literally only need 2 clicks per kill, so honestly, you're really not going to learn anything useful here. In similar fashion, the Giant Mole is just a big punching bag, and you only need to run around looking for her, and if you pray melee, there's literally nothing she can do to you. Then we have the Thermonuclear Smoke Devil, and if you fight it with melee, you will learn to walk under the walls to avoid damage, as well as the Redemption method. With magic, you literally just freeze and attack from a distance, and in my very personal opinion, this is nice to learn, but it's not gonna be absolutely crucial in many other fights. The last 2 wilderness bosses I skipped are Scorpia and the King Black Dragon. For Scorpia, it's just literally like the mage method at Thermi. Just freeze and run away, and then freezing the little healers that spawn and lure Scorpia away from them. As for the KVD, well, this was literally the very first boss added to RuneScape ever, so all you need to do against it is spray melee and attack. By killing Jad, you will learn supply management to make it through all 62 waves leading up to him. During the final fight, prayer switches are essential, as well as you dealing with the healers quickly as you make your way to your very first fire cape. I will group the Calphite Queen, General Grandor, and the Krill Tussaroth together because in my eyes, they follow the same pattern. They hit like an absolute truck, and you can't get many kills per trip. This will teach you to walk under them between attacks or whenever you need to heal, and at God Wars bosses especially, you can bring mage switches in order to heal off the minions and last for just a few more kills. As for Armadillo, you can either sit at a corner and pray for good hits, or you can learn the very sweaty Black Chinchompa method, which to my knowledge is only useful here, so it's not like you can apply it to every other boss fight. When finishing Kriara, you can also heal off the minions for a few more kills, but unless you're a PVM god, this trip is really not going to last too long. And finally, we have the Corporeal Beast. There are two efficient ways to kill this boss, either in a mass, or by grabbing your Dragoncore Hammer, Arclight, and the Bandos Godsword as you make your way back and forth between a pool of restoration, and eventually fight a big chicken with a 2000 HP. Maybe not the most interactive fight, but it's fairly easy to do for a chance at a juicy sigil. Ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed and that you learned something useful. If you did, make sure to tell me what boss you are excited to learn in order to start building confidence for harder boss encounters. I want to give a massive thank you to all my channel members. All you legends are absolutely insane, and your support is honestly unreal. If you would like to support this channel further, you can click the join button below and see all of the cool perks you can get out of your monetary pledge in the videos, in the live streams, and also in the Discord. Thank you guys so much for watching, and in the next one we will go over monsters to kill in order to get a decent chunk of profit, both as consistent drops and something slightly more dependent on RNG. I hope you have an amazing week, and I'll see you then. Peace.